Alrighty, 10 o'clock on the dot. We'll go ahead and get this kicked off. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to How to Create a Nimble and Resilient Fulfillment Strategy. My name is Ned Woodward. I am the Purchase Order Management Director at Kaspien. So to start out with today, we're basically going to be talking about fulfillment strategy, as you know. Big piece of what's going on right now is there's a lot of growth in the online retail industry. It's more important than ever to have a nimble strategy to address constant change. We've invited some pretty big players in the e-commerce and fulfillment space to talk about what they are doing or what they're specifically thinking about the e-commerce sector when it comes to fulfillment in order to remain successful and execute on any goals they have. So the hope here is that our listeners will leave today with some takeaways that they can utilize to either adapt their current strategy or start to build one. So a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into any introductions. If any relevant questions come through the chat here during the actual webinar, we'll try to take those on the fly, keep things very conversational and drive some good conversation. Otherwise, we'll spend some time to go through the deck topics and then take Q&A at the end here. So as you see here, we've got a couple hosts, myself, Ned Woodward, and my co-host Taylor Smith from MyFBAPrep. A couple expert panelists, Sebastian Swick from Amazon Lit and Todd Snively, co-founder of Expert University. So we'll jump down into some more specific introductions here, but thanks everybody for joining us today. First of all, I'll jump into my slide on my introduction here. So my name is Ned Woodward once again. I'm the Purchase Order Management Director at Kaspien. I'm part of the retail operations team. We help brands work through logistical challenges and ensure that we have adequate stock available through all of our various sales channels to execute on our goals and the goals of the brands that we work with. Kaspien was founded in 2008. We grew from a niche third-party seller to a top 5 FBA seller. We've evolved into a platform model. We've added agency and software in addition to our retail focus. So really trying to diversify within the space. Seen a ton of growth over the last 10 plus years. And I started with the company in, it was 2014. So, I've been here along the journey and seen a lot of that growth.
Ned, I think a lot of people on this call know Kaspien as another name. They know it as eTails. So talk to me a little bit about this rebrand. What was the purpose behind it?
Oh, that's a great question, Taylor. Thanks for asking. Along with that growth and adding the agency and software, divisions and models into our overall platform, we really aim to be a brand's one-stop shop for, e-commerce and really be a hub of commerce for those brands. So much like the Caspian Sea is a commerce hub and the largest inland waterway in the world, we aim to be exactly that for our brands. So, great question. Thank you for asking. Next, we'll jump over here to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
No, thanks, Ned. I'm happy to be here with you. My name is Taylor Smith. I'm co-hosting this webinar with Ned. I'm one of the 3 founders at MyFBAPrep. We are the largest network of e-commerce prep centers. We do, of course, FBA prep, but we also do D2C fulfillment, which today looks like a lot of FBM orders, or otherwise we'll send inventory on behalf of our customers straight to someone who orders online, let's say through a Shopify site or through their own website. And we've added other services like bundling, kitting, subscription box prep, and fulfillment in recent years. Our average customers, I put on there sort of jokingly, 1 million to 100 million in annual sales. And for a fun fact for people who are listening, there are 50,000 Amazon sellers who earn 1 million or more in revenue. Now, internally, we say, oh, those are the customers we're going after. But for you guys who want to gauge yourself and measure your progress, you can use that as sort of the upper echelon of Amazon sellers. I'm excited to go to the next slide and introduce our first panelist, and that is Sebastian Swick from Amazon Lit. Sebastian, top of the afternoon to you. How's it going?
Hey, top of the afternoon, Taylor. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, Sebastian, you guys started in 2013, which is 7 years ago. And I'm bringing that up now because you guys have reached being one of those top 50 FBA sellers on Amazon. Now, I don't have any stats about how many people can get into, say, the 1%. I haven't done the math there, but that's actually not that long to get to a milestone that big. If you're thinking any other industry out there, it's kind of impressive that you're able to do that in 7 years. And for the folks who are listening, we're 3 slides into this presentation, and we've already touched representatives from 2 of the top 50 accounts on Amazon. So let that sink in for a second. And I think the cost for this webinar is well worth it. So Sebastian, I want to get to a little bit of your background. Maybe you could tell us about your path to selling on Amazon. So before 2013, what were you involved in? What businesses were you doing? And how did you find your way to Amazon?
Sure. Well, I would like to say there was some strategic planning involved, but the fact of the matter was in 2012 and previous to that, I was a struggling bartender, waiter, working paycheck to paycheck. And at some point in early 2013, I heard of an opportunity where there were essentially people like me going into retail stores, purchasing products, and then selling them at a higher price on Amazon. And so, I thought about it for a while. Some things happened at the current restaurant I was working at, and in July of 2013, it just seemed like it was right. It just seemed like it was time to start. So I went all in. I quit the job I was working. I had a few $1,000s saved, and I began with the retail arbitrage model, which is going into stores and purchasing products on coupon, on discount, on clearance, and selling them on Amazon. That was the beginning.
And how did you make the switch from retail arbitrage to, let's say, wholesale in this case?
Sure. Well, it took about 3 months until I discovered really the significant impact that being prime on a listing has. So I said, let me try FBA. So I began selling FBA. This was out of a house I was renting at the time in the basement. I was filling up the basement with products. And then I saw just the mass amount of volume that can be done as soon as I made that switch to FBA. And so at that point, I said, wow, this really isn't scalable if I continue the FBM route by myself. So I began reaching out to suppliers in my area. At that time, the categories I was sticking to were organic food products and supplements. And so I started looking in my area. I'm in New Jersey, about 20 minutes west of New York City, started reaching out to suppliers. And in 2013, suppliers were open arm to having me bring them onto Amazon. So that's really where it began.
That's awesome. You've said publicly that you guys are at about a $40 million a year run rate. Congratulations on that, by the way. But you've achieved so much already. What are you guys focusing on now? Like what goals do you and your partner have for your Amazon account or eSellers RI? Tell me what's on the calendar for this year and the upcoming year.
This year we're focusing on 2 divisions of our business, which is helping others to achieve the financial freedom we have through Amazon Lit, and also more automation, more software development. We've just seen the reason we were able to even increase to where we're going to see 40 million in sales this year versus the prior year, which was about 22 million in sales. And top line revenue is important, but more importantly is the profit that's behind that. The profit has significantly increased, and it's due to us being able to automate more of our processes. We become way more efficient. We can do a lot more production with less staff due to the software that we've developed. So those are our 2 focuses for 2020 going into 2021.
That's awesome. Well, Sebastian, thanks for being with us. I'll turn it back to Ned to introduce our next guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Taylor. I'd like to welcome Todd Snively to the conversation here. Todd operates Expert University, He's an 8-figure seller operating in the Amazon space since about 2009, utilizing a wholesale distribution model, and also runs a very large e-commerce education business with profit centers including digital products, affiliate marketing, content generation, and physical products. How's it going, Todd?
Couldn't be any better. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us today. Hearing a little bit about Sebastian and his journey, I'm curious, what does that look like for you? Can you talk us through a little bit about kind of where you started with things and kind of what that journey has been? And feel free to take it as far back as you'd like to.
Sure. And honestly, I wouldn't wish my journey on my worst enemy. It was not the path I would have chosen to get to where I am today, but it definitely did play a big part. I've been self-employed pretty much since 1983, except for some small stints of employment. And the bottom line was I decided I didn't like being employed by somebody else. I wanted to have my own business. So pretty much I've had my own business, and I built up a rather substantial commodity trading company through the late 90s, early 2000s. But in 2002, I managed to just blow it out. And I'm talking about a nuclear level type of a business implosion. And so, in February 2002, I found myself $2.2 million in debt, losing my house, all the cars, all the money was gone. And I was at lunch with a friend. It's still kind of in a state of shock of how it was that I all of a sudden found myself in this destitute position. And he flat out asked me, he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I really don't know." And he said, "Well, you should think about selling physical products on eBay." And then he just started chewing on his tuna salad sandwich. And I said, "eBay? eBay? I think I've heard of eBay." And so, not having any other prospects in the world, I went home and looked around and found a bunch of stuff that was just sitting around the house that I thought maybe I could sell these things on eBay. And that was how it all started. The 20 or 30 items I threw up on eBay back in March of 2002 sold faster and for more money than I could have expected. And so my thinking was I need to figure out how to get more stuff. And since everything I was selling was my used stuff, I went out looking for more used stuff and ended up making some deals with brokers for Sam's Club and Sears to buy customer returned goods. And so basically that's how I started in 2002, buying customer returned goods, selling them on eBay. And it wasn't until 2009 that I started buying customer returned goods from a company called liquidation.com. And what I was noticing with everything I was buying from liquidation.com is that they were showing up in boxes that said Amazon on them. Every single box, Amazon, Amazon, Amazon. And again, I was like, I've heard of this Amazon thing, but I didn't understand that they were selling blenders and, lawnmowers and all this other kind of stuff. So when I went on Amazon back in 2009, I realized I could sell these customer returned goods that came from Amazon right back on Amazon as used. So we did that for a while. And then when we saw the increase in our revenue through selling these used items, FBA, we made the decision to start selling just brand new items. And that was when we began establishing relationships with wholesale distribution companies to be able to get the branded items that were brand new. And that was the turning point. That was when, revenues just went through the roof.
That's great. No, that's fantastic. That actually helps answer one of the other questions that I had, which was, did you work for a company along the way where you got a lot of this knowledge? And it sounds like it was probably largely, trial by fire, learning along the way. In that regard, did you have a mentor or a network that you utilized to learn throughout the process, as you grew this business?
No, I used that that well-known learning concept called jumping off the cliff and building the plane on the way down. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but if you can get enough of that plane built, you can have a kind of a clunky landing. But so no, it was one of those things where I literally dove in head first. And a perfect example of that was when I made this first purchase. It was 26 pallets of customer return goods from Sam's Club. And I made the deal over the phone. I hung up the phone, told my wife, hey, I just bought these 26 pallets. She goes, oh, great. Where are you going to put them? I said, in the garage. She goes, are you sure they're going to fit? I says, I don't know. She goes, how big's the pallet? I don't know. So, that leads you to running out into the garage, taking the measurements. And then I come back in and she goes, well, how'd you do? And I said, yeah, we can fit 8 of them in there. So you start solving problems at that point. We go and we find, some really inexpensive warehouse space before the truck shows up. And then we had to make a deal on a really inexpensive forklift. So, literally, I'm sitting on this forklift in this empty warehouse, waiting for this truck to show up so I can unload my first 26 pallets and see if I made a mistake, a huge mistake, or if I was going to be all right. And by, I don't know, by 2 o'clock in the morning, after going through a bunch of those pallets, I came to the conclusion, I think I'm going to be all right. And it took us only 11 months to break a $1 million top end revenue on eBay back in 2002, 2003. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm going to switch gears here for a second, and we'll try to breeze through this piece, but I wanted to know at what point or for what reason did you get into the education space? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's just like, I think it's like anything else. If people see you being successful, they want to be successful. And it's so much easier to have a mentor, right? I did it the hard way, but it's really easier to go to somebody who's already accomplished what you've accomplished or what you want to accomplish, and just hook up with them. So there was, I was in a Facebook group, and basically it was a private label group. And a lot of people were failing. They were just, they were beating their head against the wall. They just couldn't get private label to work for them. And so I was making the suggestion, well, you should look at this wholesale model, because I'd already been doing it, for I think 5 years at that point. So eventually, after helping all of these people with wholesale, somebody went and created a separate Facebook group. And they embarrassingly called it, Todd is the Amazon God of us. And I said, okay. I'll move over there, but the first thing we got to do is change this name. All right. So we changed it to Ecom Elite. There was probably 400 people that went into that group because of the help that was being offered in this other group. And after about 6 months, it was so time consuming, and being a capitalist and an entrepreneur, I said, okay, it's time to become a paid consultant. So we put together a paid group, and of those 400 people, 300 paid to move over to the paid group. And that was how the education part started. And then we just became we wanted everybody to do it the right way. Talking about having a real business. So all of the basic business skills, needed to be taught. We needed to talk about the income diversification. You can't have all your eggs in the Amazon basket or the Shopify basket or the eBay basket. And so there's several profit centers that are all income generated online. And so at some point, we decided to rebrand ourselves as Expert University. And the expertise is making money online. Amazon happens to be a huge part of it. We think everybody should be a seller on Amazon. When you really understand that model and how many competitive sellers Amazon really needs, it's almost crazy not to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Thank you for walking us through those pieces. And like I said, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you. Great being here.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on here. Talk a little bit about lay of the land, get into some topics here. So first of all, this is just a visual aid that showcases some of the growth we've seen within the U.S. e-commerce sector, as a percentage of retail sales. Really no surprise here, just setting the stage for the fact that at this point, if you don't have a marketplace growth strategy and a fulfillment strategy, that you should probably start thinking about that. So a little bit about what we know about. Oh, go ahead, Taylor.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
No, you're good.
Yeah, let's cover this slide.
Perfect. Well, what we know about what's going on at Amazon, and we'll talk about Amazon specifically here first. This is a letter that was sent out to all sellers earlier this year. Obviously, with COVID, it's caused a lot of impact to Amazon's network. Through that impact, capacity has been a huge issue. So they've spent $30 billion to build capacity, tools, services, programs, et cetera, for sellers and to hire more staff. Just this year, we've seen 33 new fulfillment centers in the U.S., which is pretty wild if you think about it. And the network of fulfillment centers in the U.S. is always changing. Last I checked, there's between sort centers and straight up fulfillment center, there's probably somewhere around 100 or more now. But they've also added peak storage, about 35 million cubic feet, which is pretty staggering in of itself. And then 175,000 new employees. So a lot to think about here from a capacity standpoint for sure.
Yeah, I look at this one, and to help put it into context, I ran the numbers, and 35 million cubic feet is about 242 Costco's, or 4.8 Costco-sized buildings per state. And that's what Amazon has added in 1 year. Todd touched on opportunity a little bit. For anyone who's wondering if they're in the right space, look at the last graph and look at this. I think it's very exciting. I'm not sure if anyone remembers this email, but I'd call it the old Jeff Bezos bait and switch. It's basically saying, here's all the good things Amazon is doing to grow its fulfillment network. And then it feels like at the bottom of the email, it's like, oh, by the way, here's all the ways we're going to muck up your business. So I want to turn it over to our panelists. I'll start with you, Sebastian. What do you make of this email? I mean, do you feel like it's overall a good thing, a bad thing? Maybe you could help us unpack this a little bit.
Overall, it's for the betterment of Amazon and its network. And to touch on what Todd said, this really with the changes that have been made now, more than ever, you need to follow somebody that has been through this process of selling on Amazon. And what Amazon expects from its sellers now is more experience. They expect you to provide services like an experienced business would. So it's no longer, early 2000s, late 90s eBay style where you can sell it from your garage or from your home. You need to learn the processes correctly so that products don't sit in fulfillment centers. That's what they want. They want sellers to analyze products, source products so that they're profitable and they're in and out of their fulfillment centers. Amazon no longer wants to be your storage facility. And so these requirements are stating that, the IPI threshold has gone from 4 to 500. The quantity limitations are set because they're growing at such a rapid pace right now, and demand is so high that they can't, even with these 33 new fulfillment centers, they just can't keep that much in-house if it's not moving. And so they're limiting based on sales and velocity from the prior months. And then the free removal promotions, that was nice. We definitely took advantage of that. It has now ended, but I'm sure they'll bring it back in again. But for the time being, it was once again in pursuit of trying to free up stagnant merchandise to bring in products that are actually bringing in profit for Amazon and for its sellers.
I think we're going to be agreeing a lot today, because when we had sellers come to us and say, oh my gosh, they're limiting what we can send in for the rest of the year because we didn't meet a certain metric on that IPI, on that inventory performance index. My response was basically, that's Amazon telling you you're not running your business as well as you should be running your business. That's a wake-up call for you. That's not something to get upset about and have a tantrum. That's telling you, take a look at what you're buying, what you're sending down to FBA, And what's wrong, what Amazon is telling you is what's wrong with it. They're trying to help you in a lot of ways. But people don't look at it like that. They're just like, oh, they limited me and they did this and Amazon sucks and blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is these kinds of things not only are to protect Amazon, but they're to help us become better sellers. Amazon's telling you exactly what you have to do to have a better running business, right? Take care of your stranded products, remove or discount the slow movers, and so on. And then they'll reward you, and the reward is unlimited space. They'll let you send in as much as you want if it's the right stuff, not only for you, but for Amazon.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about maybe some of the implications with COVID, kind of outside of what we talked about a little bit. We talked about the Amazon restrictions, the IPI. I think you guys both hit the nail on the head there. But we've also seen pretty substantial impact to the FC network, which was alluded to on that previous slide through that letter. Receiving delays, pickup and appointment issues, having to utilize expedited shipping, just creating a really challenging climate for sellers, especially those that have operated at a much higher scale in past holiday seasons. With those IPI restrictions, you may be very limited in what you can send in, and making it very hard to execute on any sort of holiday strategy, because let's say you send in your first batch of inventory, it starts selling, you're going to be fairly limited in what you can send in to replenish based on that IPI score if it's not up there. So a lot going on in that space, but COVID has also had an extreme interruption across the global supply chain. So I want to hear a little bit maybe about that. And Sebastian, do you want to weigh in on kind of what that has looked like for your network and maybe your global supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was for sure something that made us quickly pivot. We were forced to pivot. In a matter of weeks, our entire business and environment just completely changed. There was higher demand than ever with less supply and less ability to create more supply. And, as far as I could speak on the supply chain aspect of it right now, and I'm seeing foreshadowing of this happening, of what happened in March and April with just huge impacts to supply chain reoccurring again. I think during the summer months, we all thought that this may be passing and that distributors, suppliers, manufacturers will be back to normal business as usual, but that is not the case. As COVID cases are increasing again, we're seeing supply chain cuts, production cuts. Procter & Gamble released last week they expect a 15% decrease in production all the way through Q2 2021. So, now what we're doing is we're trying to procure as much as we can in anticipation that we might see some of the same environment that we saw in early March through late April.
And Todd, you call it the
absolutely.
Butterfly effect. Maybe you could help the listeners understand, what do you mean by the butterfly effect in the global supply chain?
Well, consumers, they go to buy their toilet paper and all they see is there's no toilet paper, right? They don't understand what's happening across the entire world. The global GDP in 2020 is expected to have its sharpest contraction since the Second World War. So we got, the volume of global trade fell something like 18% back in May. So we had this initial surge in demand of products that were already in existence, right? Then all of a sudden, because of all of the limitations, exports were affected everywhere. It affected exports from the United States, Japan, and the European Union. And that economic contraction in China was actually smaller than the global average because that country controlled the outbreak. They reopened its economy relatively quickly, right? But in a global context of increased production, you have to look at everybody's in crisis recovery right now. There are no raw materials, right, to be able to start production of products that take a long time just to produce because of even antiquated processes. And paper towels is one of my perfect examples. If somebody actually understands what it takes to make a roll of paper towels, it's a lengthy process done on equipment that's 50 years old. They can only make so much, and they can only do it so fast. So while we had this huge bounce in sales, I mean, we literally sold a year of inventory in 3 months. The restocking problem caused by what I call this butterfly effect. When you have a factory shutting down in India or China or Mexico or, wherever, it's going to create a problem. Then we all of a sudden, all of the airline flights stop. And people, I don't know if they understand this, but these airlines, these scheduled airlines, deliver a lot of cargo to the United States and Europe and whatnot. So it's just one thing after another. With that butterfly effect, that ripple effect, one factory shuts down, one airline stops flying, and all of a sudden you can't buy toilet paper. And people just want to buy toilet paper. So they start looking everywhere, and eventually the manufacturers try to figure out, okay, we'll go to 3 shifts, or we'll start working on Sundays, or we'll hire more people, just like what Amazon is doing. But eventually you need the manufacturing to catch up. And to Sebastian's point, they're going to have a hard time doing that, a real hard time. And especially because of all this government intervention on how many people can be in a factory, how many people can be in a warehouse, how close they can be. So whatever infrastructure we have now has been all reduced by these additional requirements caused by COVID.
That last piece is a very interesting thing that you brought up, Todd, with the government piece. I'm going to kick it over to Sebastian. Sebastian, have you seen any of that actually impacting your physical locations here in the United States?
We've been fortunate enough where we're considered an essential business because of the products that we provide, where I haven't seen that directly from the government as far as direct restraints on us. However, indirectly, you have a lot of warehouse workers. We pay our warehouse workers a fair sum, definitely way above minimum wage. However, when a warehouse worker leaves here for COVID reasons, maybe, they have someone sick at home or just fear, they can file for unemployment, and then they were able to get the unemployment check plus the additional stimulus that they were getting, and they were actually making more than what they were working. So from their standpoint, I completely understand why they would do that, but it made it harder for us to employ people at a time where there was so much demand. Then there was the fear factor. Employees might not want to come to work. It was much harder to hire. And if you were hiring people, your current employees were kind of standoffish because they didn't know them. They didn't know their situation. Everyone was worried, could they contract COVID? And if you look, we're spotlighting Amazon, and Amazon just released a report last week that they had 20,000 cases in their warehouses just in the US this year alone. So, it's become very challenging to continue production at a time when there's so much demand, yet you have to separate your employees, you have to separate the time, you have to make sure that safety is the #1 standard, but still trying to meet those goals and really just keep up with demand. The two contradict each other, and it's been really hard to pivot that and find that perfect balancing spot. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, I was just going to
Go
say,
ahead, Todd.
Our warehouse is in Michigan, and I don't know what everybody knows about Michigan, but we had a governor that was, I believe, incredibly overreaching with the limits that they were putting on businesses. And we were able also to qualify as an essential business, but that didn't mean that there wasn't going to be, regular visits, enforcement visits, and everything Sebastian said. We experienced the same thing, and we tried to bring in temporary workers, and the regular employees just flat out said, nope, don't know these people, don't want to be even 6 feet away from them. They trusted the team that was there, and they were willing to work double shifts for time and a half and weekends for double time. And we threw in hazard pay, bonus pay, all kinds of things to try to keep people motivated, from a monetary aspect, and did everything that we could, to keep the team cohesive. But it was so difficult. And then when we did actually have one team member not show up one day, and when the manager called, found out that that team member's brother had come down with the COVID, and the question was posed to me, should we tell the others? And I'm like, you have to tell the others. We're not going to play that game. And we had a few people walk out, after you make that kind of an announcement. And it doesn't take away from our mission. We need to deliver these, these items. We had moved from most of our FBA inventory had sold out so fast. It wasn't just restocking the FBA, it was also now shipping the huge volume of FBM that we had not done in a long time. So there was a lot of pivoting, a lot of anxious moments, 1 or 2 nervous breakdowns, but we got through it. And everybody right now, I think, has settled into this new normal, but we're still dealing with all the supply issues.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been an unprecedented time for sure in that space. So we're going to move on here. Just some interesting things kind of going on in the space. We've seen Amazon and mall operators eyeing potential space that to be repurposed to Amazon fulfillment centers. Just a capacity thing. We've already talked a little bit about that and what Amazon's been doing to address that. Just interesting. Next, we've got the marketplace holiday push. So traditionally, we've seen Amazon taking kind of the lion's share of things through Q4. Prime Day being a big piece of that. But more recently, with Walmart and Target introducing some different pieces into the fold, we're going to see some more competition this year. It's going to be interesting to see how these different platforms are competing for that holiday consumer demand and the increased demand there. So it will just be interesting to see what that looks like as we get a little bit further into the season here. Not sure if anybody has any specific comments or thoughts there.
I just think that's I think that's normal for business or any sector where currently online retail is still in its infancy. When you look at it, it's still in its infancy. And when you look back at different sectors, like let's go for instance television. You look at TV in the 1960s, there was 4 channels available. Fast forward to today, you could literally have thousands of channels on your TV. And that's kind of where we are right now. You're displaying here 3 big names in e-commerce, and really just 2, Walmart and Amazon, and Amazon's capitalizing a majority of it. But eventually what we're going to see is decentralization, and there'll just be a lot more players in the game. And so Amazon was the original to have this Prime Day, this 1-day, 2-day huge sale event, and now others are going to follow suit, and then others will also kind of not reinvent, but just copy the wheel.
Yeah, copy. You're right. I mean, whenever you have a mega giant like Amazon, you have the crumbs, right, on the ground. And you have everybody that has their brand loyalty too. I mean, just look at eBay. There are people that will only buy on eBay. They'll never go on Amazon. It's the same thing with Target and Walmart. They have their people. And those 2 companies are poised better than anybody to give Amazon, I don't even want to call it a run for its money, but let's just say vacuum up most of the crumbs that are out there, which are still substantial crumbs. Walmart, they still have these dreams of outpacing Amazon. That'll be interesting to watch because they're, to Sebastian's point, they're probably the only one that has a shot at doing that. But I think upstarts, I think the people right now that are getting into the e-commerce, buying more stuff online, like more of that boutique approach, if you will. I mean, there's a time to go onto Amazon, and then there's a time to find the niche boutique type store. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, which means e-commerce will continue to grow. But is Amazon really going to be the one leading that, or is it going to be all of these other smaller players rising up to take advantage of the crumbs that Amazon doesn't even care about?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, no, that's a great.
Todd made some great points there, especially with the boutiques, because as big as Amazon is, what's its weakness is that there is absolutely no intimate relationship between Amazon and its customers, and a boutique can actually provide that intimate relationship. Maybe have a salesperson show up on webcam right there as you're browsing their website looking for the right product for you, or something that's more unique, that really is specific niche towards what you're looking for. That's going to be the boutiques, and there's going to be a lot more of that in the coming years, 100%.
Yeah, and that's a great call out, Sebastian, because as anybody that operates on Amazon knows, they say they have a very large focus on the customer the customer experience aspect. So I thought that was a very interesting point from you. So we're going to move on here. We'll touch a little bit on Q4. To be quite honest, we're far enough through the year now that if you haven't yet developed your Q4 strategy for this year, you might be a little bit late to the game there. So at this point, we are about 40 minutes in here. I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you do have questions, just a reminder to put those there. But I'd like to go ahead and move into the meat of the presentation here. And the reason why everybody is attending this webinar, talk about our fulfillment strategies. So first of all, I'd like to hand it over to Sebastian. Tell us a little bit about your fulfillment strategy and what you're doing as far as your strategy goes there.
Our strategy right now is it really is to flood Amazon with as much product as we can right now. So we did our analyzing, we did our proper sourcing of goods, August and September, into what was going to be trending going into Q4, what new products and new categories that were unexpected. When we do our research early in 2020, we had to kind of target them as well now and procure those goods. And we've just begun to flood the fulfillment centers with as much product as possible. And this is what I tell our mentees in Amazon Lit, is that we have great concerns that come even November, Amazon's going to be so filled with products and demand that the lead times already for a lot of our Amazon sellers that we speak to, they tell us they have 2-3 week lead times for their truckloads just to get checked into Amazon centers. And this problem's not going away. And we know for selling on Amazon for years now that Q4 brings a real nice chunk of new sellers. We see about a 30% increase in sellers that don't even sell in a majority of the year and only sell in Q4. And that increase is just going to cause a huge jam in their systems. They're taking preventative cautions right now to try to stop that from happening, but I just don't see it. Even with the limits, everything that they're doing, the increase in fulfillment centers, increase in employees, I don't see it. At the end of the day, I still see that there's going to be a huge logistic jam come holiday season.
Sebastian, if you'll indulge us for a minute, maybe we could go back down memory lane. Talk to us about, for the sellers on here who might be thinking, I've grown, I've left my day job, I'm doing this full time, and they're looking at getting a warehouse. What did that look like in the early days for you? And then fast forward to today, what does it look like now?
The warehouse in the early days was, the garage was filled. I was tired of carrying 50-pound boxes up and down those stairs and bringing them to the UPS store. And so we got a space, we were just like, you know what, it's time. We talked about it for months and we're like, you know what, it's time. And what that space looked like, it was 1,000 square feet. It had one dock door and no bathroom. I had to walk to another building to use a bathroom, and I didn't even know how to set it up. I had no idea. I just knew we needed more space. So we got more space, and then the first thing we did was we put some corrugated boxes on the floor and started putting our products on top of these flattened boxes. And then we were like, what should we do now? We grabbed ourselves a composition book and started writing down our inventory, which was, maybe 20 pieces of Kirkland fish oil, 30 pieces of some mac and cheese. Wasn't much there, but we kind of followed that same pattern that Todd talked about. We jumped off the cliff and we were just building the airplane on the way down. And so from there, as we grew, next thing was, okay, now we need employees, because here we are stickering products. Here we are boxing these goods. Why are we doing this when really the scaling of the businesses comes in reaching out to brands, distributors, and sourcing the correct products? We should be focusing on that. So the next thing we did was we brought in employees. And then from there, once we brought in employees, we grew. We knew we needed a second space. Well, this time we knew that one dock door wouldn't suffice because we had inbound trucks, outbound trucks. There was a jam happening there. So we went with 2 dock doors. And we just learned as we experienced these different problems and then came to solutions for them.
So now you're doing 8,000 to 10,000 units prepped a day. What does your facility look like? How many square feet? How many preppers do you have working there?
We have 20,000 square feet. Our offices are above the warehouse. We have 6 production stations, an FBM station. We run all of our products through heat sealing machines. The process of bundling, a majority of the products we sell are bundled goods. So the process of bundling is much faster. It's much more efficient that way. We have a warehouse system that we've built from scratch. We have, we have about 40 warehouse workers downstairs, 25 of them being on the production side, creating these ASINs, these kits, these bundles. We have about 10 pickers and FBM workers, and then we have our managers.
And how many loading docks do you have now?
We have 2 loading docks. So we wanted something with more loading docks. However, the space, the location that we got was more important than the loading docks. We found a location that was about 10 minutes from my home, and also my business partner Ted's home, and then the other direction for Eric's home. So it really, sometimes in business you have to find what's going to be best for you as far as for the family situation, and that was what was best for all of us. And the space is clean. So I think the fact that we also got ourselves a new warehouse space really helped us when pursuing new brands to work with us exclusively, because that's a lot of what we do now as well. And kind of having them come in and trophy our warehouse, trophy our operation, and let them know, if you partner with us, this is what your operation, your services rendered to the customer are going to look like. This is who's going to be handling it. So that wow factor has also allowed us to really to just scale.
And I know that you have web developers internally. You mentioned you have corporate offices above the warehouse. What's maybe one thing that the intermediate listeners or the advanced listeners who are on the call can start to think about within the warehouse, something that you think puts you guys ahead of the game?
How to get your products in and out within 48 hours. How to do that. You do not want the product sitting. So if you see the products that we have here, anything that's for Amazon is going in and out within 48 hours of check-in. We send out 5 full truckloads, 1 a day, and we have a full circle production, meaning it comes in, then the next step in the circle is it gets received. Next step in the circle, it gets added to a bill of lading. Next step, it ends up being picked, then to production, and then right back to the docks where it started to be loaded onto a truck. And so the best way as you grow your business, it's about that product isn't making you any money when it's sitting in your warehouse. So you need to find how to count steps, cut those steps, and get the product in and out. I've had the fortune of going to some very large distributors, very large, recognized brands, conglomerates, and see their warehouse operations. And the main thing that they focus on is counting steps, how many steps their employees take in a day. Because if you have you know, just for us, we have 40 employees down there. If we could cut 50 steps, that's 2,000 steps a day at a sec, you know, if let's say each step takes 1 second for them, I mean, the amount of time they could just save in a day, let alone a year, is just adding to the efficiency of your business.
Wow, that's fascinating. Hearing kind of how deep you're diving into some of these metrics to you know, make sure that your space is as efficient as possible. Todd, do you want to talk us through a little bit about your strategy and what you're doing within this space right now?
Yeah, because it's actually changed quite a bit. You know, as I pointed out in 2002 when I first started, one of the very first things I did was go and get a warehouse before even I had any product. I had the warehouse first, an empty warehouse. And over the, you know, the last almost 18, 19 years now, I kept saying to myself, "Oh my gosh, you know, I have an online business. And we do have some private label brands that do really, really well with big commerce stores and WooCommerce stores and whatnot. But I have this online business, yet I have this warehouse. And I've moved all over the world, actually. And matter of fact, the warehouse we have right now, I've never stepped foot in. I've never even seen it. I'm not even sure I have pictures of it. I'd have to go look. But the bottom line was my thinking when we had the warehouse was just like Sebastian. We needed to integrate tech. We had to get the best software. We had to go to laser barcode scanner and receiving. We had to improve the quality control in picking and packing and shipping and minimize. Matter of fact, I went in one time and I saw we have a pillow machine, you know, that makes these air pillows. And I noticed it way across the warehouse from the shipping station. And I'm like, do you guys actually walk over there to make air pillows? And they're like, yep. I go, why is that? And it all came down to the fact that when we moved into that warehouse, the movers set the pillow machine down there and plugged it in. And heaven forbid, anybody should unplug it and move it closer to the shipping station. But anyway, my whole idea now is to get out of the warehouse business, to be honest with you. I think, and it's because of players in the industry now, like my FBA Prep, right? Not to shamelessly plug Taylor there. But my thinking is, because I have a lot of our members come to us as they're, you know, getting into 7- and 8-figure revenues. They ask the question, should I get a warehouse? And I tell them, you know what? If I had it to do all over again, I would never have gotten a warehouse. Now, I say that, but the warehouse over the decades has done really well for me. But it allowed me to create profit centers I didn't think I would ever want or have, and so I'm not poo-pooing warehouses. I'm just saying there's different ways to do things. So right now, as I'm getting older, right, and lazier, I'm thinking, you know what? And with all of the technology out there, like, why don't I deal with experts that this is what they do? They've been managing warehouses forever. They can take care of warehouse employees. They deal with all of the issues. And I just kind of pay for what I use, right? So I think that if I'm training somebody now and they get to the point where they're asking the question, should I get a warehouse? I think I'm also going to present to them the thought that they need to look at companies like MyFBA Prep and even your competitors, so to speak, if there are any, you know, to decide if it makes more sense to farm that out and let the experts in logistics manage your logistics. And then you do what makes the money in the company. You source products, you develop relationships, you do inventory management, and let the warehouse experts run the warehouse.
Yeah. I'll go back to something that Sebastian said, which is speed. When people ask me, well, I'm really dealing with opening my own warehouse or using a service, what do you say? I say to them, have you achieved speed yet? Can you get it in and out quickly? Are you doing it on your own? Are you doing it through someone else? That's incredibly important. Regardless of what your solution is, can you process inventory quickly? Then I ask them, what business are you in? And if you are not in the business of running a warehouse, I mean, you get a hint of how well Sebastian and his partner Eric do it by how he talks about it, counting steps, counting how many seconds does that save us in a day, translated to a week, to a year. If you're not that deep in it, you're probably not in the warehouse business, and you might want to focus on getting more accounts or optimizing your Amazon business in some other way. So that's when I encourage people to look to outsource that. Now, as far as MyFBA Prep,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say Sebastian made an excellent point earlier that I just want to circle back on real quick. That there's really, in this business, there's really only two things that can put you out of business faster than anything, and it's overhead and buying products that don't sell. So this is another reason why I think this should at least be a stepping stone before you decide to get your own warehouse. Because I work with some sellers. Maybe you guys heard of BuyBoxer. He's doing like 50, 55 million a year. He had 3 warehouses and I think 135 employees. That's a lot of overhead. And then when it comes time to pivot, if you can't pivot away from overhead, you're just going to get run over by a bad economy. And so I think being, nimble, swift, and having a plan where you can pay as you go, so to speak, is starting to make more sense, especially with all of the technology available. And to your point also, Ned, what is your job? I think really as an Amazon seller, it's sourcing products and doing inventory management, especially with the wholesale model.
Yeah, you brought up BuyBoxer. Scott from BuyBoxer is actually a friend of everyone on this call. The Kaspien CEO, Kunal, recently did a podcast with him, and I know he's also had the Amazon Lit guys, and Todd, you and Chris have had him on your podcast. So it is interesting to kind of share the knowledge with the people who have learned it and mastered it. I'll hit on my FBA prep strategy, and then we'll move on to Kaspien. Our strategy is kind of easy because it's dictated by the customer. We want to receive a PO of 10 pallets or 1 container, and we'll prep it, we'll fulfill it, we'll freight forward it on whatever way that is that enables the customer to focus on selling and growth. So the idea of outsourced warehousing is we'll manage that for you. And what I often tell the big customers who are saying, we have a warehouse, but we're looking to outsource it, we're just not sure yet. And I always ask them, do your customers, to the brands you represent, are they asking you a lot of questions about warehousing, or do they just not care and they want you to do it? In the cases where they don't care and they just want it done, it kind of leaves you with the idea of focus on the business you're in, help them grow their business, whether that's through PPC or inventory management, things like merchandising bundles, et cetera, et cetera. Warehousing prep, it's kind of unsexy. No one really cares about it. And I view it as a pass-fail arena more so than a B, C, D, F grading scale. Okay, so Ned, talk to us a little bit about Kaspien. What kind of fulfillment strategies do you guys have going on? And I know we'll also cover this in the next few slides, but please share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Taylor. Kind of like what you mentioned, it's based largely on our customer, or in our case, we're talking about these brands, or as we refer to them, partners. We're basically creating these tailored fulfillment strategies with each of these brands to help them hit their marketplace or e-commerce goals. So, whether that's pure play through an FBA only model, if they're able to ship directly into Amazon, great. But if not, we operate a warehouse space in Spokane Valley, actually just a few blocks up from our corporate headquarters. It's about 40,000 square feet, a team of about 30 individuals processing out to FBA, a little bit of FBM and some of that, but we're very focused on FBA. We also have a dropship division internally that has a catalog of over 1,000 products, and that's where a good portion of our development team is focused on building out tools to help with integrations. Anybody that's diversified into a dropship or DTC model on this call probably can attest to the fact that there are a lot of intricacies that can come into play with that model. And so if you don't have the right automation in place, you can get yourself into a tight spot. So between that FBA retail model, between the DTC or dropship model, we're pretty diversified between those two. as far as our fulfillment partners or our network of warehouses throughout the United States that we partner with, we have a very wide network of brands globally at this point, internationally and between the U.S., probably well over 700 brands at this point. So they all ship from different locations all over the world. So we needed to have some spread across the United States to make sure that we can fulfill efficiently into Amazon and beyond there. So that's a little bit of what it looks like for us. Did you have any other specific questions that you were thinking on that, Taylor?
No, let's go to the next one because we're going to stay in the realm of fulfillment.
Great. This is international.
Yeah, so this slide's about web traffic. In the US, Amazon.com saw 30% growth. You'll see that from February to August. But as you'll notice, Mexico's higher than that. If you look at Canada, over 40%. And then Singapore, way up there, 100% growth on Amazon.sg for Singapore. I'd like to ask everyone else who's on this call to weigh in here, but Ned, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Sebastian and Todd. Kaspien's a behemoth of a company. Are you guys selling in the international marketplaces?
Yeah, actually, we've been diversified in the international marketplaces for as long as I've been at Kaspien, which at this point is over 6 years. Currently operating in the US, obviously, Canada, UK, and Germany. I think it's important to note that success with a lot of the products in the US doesn't always equal success internationally. So you can utilize some of the same thought processes as you expand and try to scale into these different marketplaces, but you have to be aware of the different market conditions at play, different pricing considerations, consumer trends and cultures are different across the board. Beyond that, just landing inventory can be very nuanced. Logistics, import compliance, all these things that maybe you don't have to worry about in the US, all of a sudden become very important to not only landing the inventory, but being profitable across the supply chain. So you've got to do the research. You got to ensure you have solid contacts and partners and providers to help you explore and execute on any of these international expansion goals. Because if you rush into it, you can definitely create some not so fun situations for yourselves, your brands and your products. So just looking at this list, there's definitely some very interesting countries on here. Kaspien is definitely eyeing some potential expansion into other international marketplaces throughout the next couple of years. And just to kind of like give a little maybe behind the curtain, I'd say looking at this list, Mexico, UAE, Australia. Another one that's very interesting is let's see, India is very, it's on the lower end of this curve, but it's definitely very interesting to us just based on the overall volume of that marketplace. So, Sebastian, do you have any thoughts? What is Amazon Lit doing in the international space?
Right now we're just sticking to domestic, Mexico, Canada. We do have a UK account, but with everything that's happened this year, we focused on this side versus sending out right now currently to UK, Europe. There's just so much pent up demand here that we're unable to fulfill, that for us to send over there would just dilute what we're doing here right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of distractions this year, and if you're trying to diversify into international marketplaces at this time, you could create even further distractions. So, Todd, what about you? What does it look like for Expert University and yourself?
Well, when our members and people we consult with ask us about expanding into the international markets, normally the first question I ask them is, "Oh, you've completely conquered the U.S. market, the .com?" And of course, the answer is no. So if there's plenty of roads still to pave in the U.S., I look at the international markets as a bit of a distraction. Now, if they feel they've maxed out in that U.S. .com, I would then move them over into the other U.S. marketplaces like eBay and Walmart or JD.com, and some people even fit into Etsy, right? We're actually looking at other international marketplaces as opposed to the Amazon international marketplaces, like Taobao in China, is a huge market. I mean, they have 550 million visitors a month. Now, compared to Amazon, at close to 6 billion a month. That seems small, but it's definitely an interesting marketplace. And even Walmart, I think they have like 470 million visitors a month. So again, Taobao in China actually has more traffic than Walmart.com in the United States. So rather than trying to deal with the intricacies of the Amazon international marketplaces, I think going to an internal international marketplace that's well known, like in Southeast Asia, there's something called Shopee, right? In India, they have Flipkart. So I think those actually are easier to deal with. You'll have some of the same, issues, VAT and whatnot, as the other marketplaces. But I think that's actually more exciting and a completely different thing than just getting into it in an additional Amazon marketplace.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, I think that kind of leads us into maybe the next piece here. Talking about NARF a little bit, North American remote fulfillment, and potentially being able to just cross-list easily into Canada and Mexico. Sebastian, that may have been what you were alluding to with some of your previous comments. Is NARF something that you guys are using?
Yeah, because NARF it doesn't change the way we didn't have to pivot. It didn't change our operation. It was just simply signing up for the pilot program when it was first released, and then that allowed us to sell the products we were already selling, but to a broader audience. So for us, it just made sense. We didn't have to make any changes to our operation. If anything, the only change we had to do is maybe purchase more volume, because we did see a small increase in some of the products we were selling, but yet it allowed us to increase our sales without making any changes to our business model. So the NARF did make sense for us.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Sorry,
step
Todd, I think I cut you off.
I was just saying NARF's a bit of a no-brainer. And doesn't that actually sound like some kind of weird animal sneezing? NARF. But anyway,
yes.
Anything that makes it easier to sell stuff, I'm all for. I mean, if they could do a NARF, in other than North America, that would be great, but they can't. So to me, it's not an international marketplace, because all they're doing is showing your inventory from the US in Canada and Mexico, right? You don't have to ship, you don't have to store, you don't have to mess with anything that you normally would have to with an international marketplace. Your US inventory basically is just that central, cache, if you will. So it's the same units available in the US are now available in Canada and Mexico, and it's all single global SKU. So I think NARF's a bit of a no-brainer. You don't really have to think about it. There's no reason really not to participate.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. From my perspective and from Kaspien's perspective, it's kind of as long as you've got the right controls in place with your compliance and your pricing, it's kind of a set it and forget it, and just reap the benefits. Great. Let's see here. So we're about 7 minutes over right now. We made it through a good chunk of the topics here. We had some great conversation. I don't see any questions in the chat in the actual webinar here. Is there anything that anybody wanted to ask, any of the other panelists or us hosts about, or any last kind of discussion topics to leave with before we end?
One point I did want to make is, everybody talks about fourth quarter and what are you going to do for fourth quarter and this and that. In all of the years I've been selling on Amazon, my first quarter is normally just as good as my fourth quarter. So even though I think Taylor was saying it's a little late for fourth quarter right now, it's not too late for first quarter. I mean, you're really in a good spot right now. Don't forget about first quarter, okay? And so if you make your plans and you're getting inventory down into FBA and all of that, and you're worried about missing fourth quarter, don't worry. First quarter's awesome also.
That is so true.
Thanks for that, Todd.
I think that goes perfectly in line with Todd, what you were saying. Have you finished paving all the roads in the US? And that's such a great point. Sebastian, I have one queued up for you. You recently said that the 2020 motto for Amazon Lit is pivot or fail. maybe you can unpack that a little bit, and feel free to also respond to what Todd was saying. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I was just, as soon as Todd said that, I thought about how January is typically better for us than December, believe it or not. I mean, November's a great month, but December you have only, not even 2 weeks before Amazon stops guaranteeing that prime promise of it having delivered for the holiday. By December 15th or so, a few days before or after, they'll start showing right there on their website that they can't guarantee this will be delivered in time for the holiday. So January seems, we see a huge influx in, I guess, gifts, gift cards, just money that people receive. They're going now and they're spending it on Amazon. And so to Todd's point, yeah, it's definitely not too late to start selling on Amazon, especially when Amazon opened up 33 fulfillment centers this year. Clearly, they see that the demand is not going away. And so if you're thinking about selling on there, it is the time now. And for anyone who is selling, this was a time that showed us that we needed to stay agile, that we needed to learn how to pivot. And the funny thing is, we've had practice and experience in pivoting throughout. So, even though we've only been around since 2013, the suppliers who we dealt with in 2013, we're not dealing with anymore. The operation and the way we handled our processes that we did in 2013 is completely different today than it was then. And that's because the environment, it's technology, and technology is constantly changing. It is so sped up now, faster than it's ever been. And so if you're not on top of these changes that are happening, and if you're not agile or willing to be agile, you're going to fail.
Yep, absolutely. Todd, Sebastian, any last words from either of you before we kind of wrap things up here?
I'll go. I'll just tell everybody that is thinking about potentially selling on Amazon that even with all of the craziness that's going on right now, I still think it's a wonderful time to get involved. And it's just getting, one thing that is getting easier is establishing relationships with suppliers. Even though inventory levels are down a little bit, we just work twice as hard. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You can do that with software. Always think about the automation that's available to you, and also look at outsourcing the repetitive tasks. The things that you can hand off. The sooner you hand those off, the better off you and your business is going to be. But I feel there's never been a better time. And if you get started now and learn how to work in this kind of an environment, if things ever do quote unquote normalize, you'll wonder how did everything get so simple and so easy all of a sudden. It's like it'll be like we're waking up out of the matrix. But
So Todd, in closing for you, where can people look you up if they want to find more information or see more about the Experts University?
Sure, yeah, just go to expertuniversity.com and you'll be able to listen to our podcasts. You can read some of our articles, and you'll also be able to get on our mailing list if you want, expertuniversity.com.
Hey guys, real quickly, there are actually some questions here in the chat that I failed to see, so we'll go ahead and take a look at some of these here. Give me just a second, trying to get a better view on these. Sorry, go ahead. Let's see. The first one here, will Amazon and Walmart accept newcomers, someone who has no previous sales? That's one that I can take. So Amazon will. Walmart's a little bit more of a gated community or marketplace from my understanding. So, it's much easier to work through Walmart through some sort of, a retailer, somebody like, let's say like Amazon Lit or like, Todd's business or a Kaspien per se. If you have questions about that, you can specifically reach out to us on Kaspien.com and we can help get you connected there. Amazon, I believe, is a little bit more free flowing as far as who can sign up there. So I hope that answers that question. I'm a total newbie. What's IPI and what are the new inbound restrictions? Todd, maybe can I kick that one over to you? Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how you view that IPI?
Sure. IPI stands for Inventory Performance Index. So, in a nutshell, Amazon's giving you a score. It's a number from 0 to 1,000, and they use it to figure out, how good are you at managing your inventory? How good are you at keeping things in stock? And how good are you at eliminating underperforming selling, products? So they check that every quarter, right? They want to make sure that that the people that are doing well are rewarded. And like I said, if you have a score above a minimum amount that they set, they will give you unlimited storage quantities. It used to be I think the score right now is 500. I mean, I could be wrong on that. Someone can check me on that. So if you're above 500, then basically you're good to go. If you're below 400, they're going to limit the amount of storage space that they're going to allot to you. So, usually you can go right into your Seller Central account. You can see your current storage limits, your potential storage limits at the bottom of the shipping planning window. Okay. And again, if you're brand new, the fun thing about being brand new, you have no history. So they literally give you a pass for, I believe, 2 quarters. So they'll give you unlimited access as a brand new seller, which seems counterintuitive to how Amazon normally operates, but they're going to allow you, your swing at bat to see how you can do, and then they'll adjust it accordingly.
Yeah, thanks for taking that, Todd. You're spot on. The other questions that look like we're in here were just regarding whether there will be a recording sent out afterwards. So yes, this is a recorded session. We will be sending this recording out to the email addresses that you would have registered with. So just be on the lookout for that. But Todd, do you mind just giving us, for your last word, where people can find you if they wanted to get in contact?
I did cover that, expertuniversity.com. I think we still need to hear from Sebastian on that. How do we get a hold of Sebastian?
I'm here,
Yeah,
Todd.
absolutely.
And you could find us at amazonlit.com or go on Instagram, check out Amazon Lit. We have plenty of free content there. And if you're struggling or want to learn more about selling on Amazon, you can go to esellersri.com.
Thank you, Sebastian. Taylor, what about you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, all of your questions, www.myfbaprep.com. And if you'd like to have a conversation about us quoting your services, Tom, that's my partner, Tom, T-O-M, at myfbaprep.com. He'd love to send you his calendar, and you can jump in like that.
Great, thank you. For Kaspien, it's Kaspien.com, so that's Kaspien.com. Reach out to us on there. Somebody will get in contact with you. I just wanted to end everything today by saying thank you so much to Todd and Sebastian for joining. Really appreciate all the insights and all the tidbits that you shared. I think this was extremely valuable for our listeners. And to Taylor, thank you so much for all your help in co-hosting and for all the insight you've provided today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
That was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
All right. Well, with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Ned Woodward, and we appreciate your time. And hopefully we can get this group together for some more content in the future.